Nick Robinson here for Polygon, and today I'm joined by Daniel McGuffey of Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, who's going to be showing us a very extended look at the Mad Max game coming later this year. Welcome.
Thank you, Nick.
What are we looking at exactly here? Give us the Cliff's Notes, the elevator pitch on this Mad Max game.
Yeah, okay. Well, so a little bit of context. I'm about 30 hours into the progression so far.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at what is pretty late game content. I'm definitely through more than half of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to take you through a little bit of everything today. I want to show you a little bit of what it's like to drive around in the wasteland, what it's like to command the Magnum Opus, the weaponry and physics-based combat available in the open world. And then we're going to take you inside of some enemy camps and show you what it's like to dismantle the perimeter defenses of a camp, as well as do some hand-to-hand combat. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of everything today. For the moment, I am making my way across the wasteland, and I'll give you a quick look at the map.
Okie doke.
This is the wasteland. This is where you'll spend your time in Mad Max. And if it looks pretty massive, that's because it is. And if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that all of the objective types that you have in the game are visible here. And there's quite a bit of stuff you can do. These icons indicate optional missions, and the ones that are this color, the one I'm headed to right now, those are the story missions.
Gotcha.
So we're headed to a story right now. Max is trying to get his hands on a V8 engine so that he can get the machine he wants to get out of the wasteland and cross the plains of silence. And along the way, in order to do that, we've gotten ourselves into a race, the Gastown races, which is where I just left. I just left Gastown, where I learned that in order to participate in the races, I need to have a registered fighter. And you can see that I've got a dude in the back right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's Chumbucket. He's my mechanic. He's also he gives you some exposition throughout the game. He's a comedic foil, and he's Max's ability to upgrade the Magnum Opus. So anytime I want to change the engine, the exhaust, suspension, the armaments, the armor, Chumbucket's my guy.
Gotcha.
But he's not a registered fighter, so I gotta go seek counsel from a fellow named Crowdazzle. And that's where I'm headed right now.
These are excellent names. So I think one thing to talk about right up front is that this is a game from Avalanche Studios, who I think a lot of people probably most fondly remember from Just Cause 2, which is one of my favorite games of the last generation. And that game had a non-insignificant vehicular component to it, but probably I don't think you spent as much time in cars as you do in this. What's like the rough breakdown of time you're spending in a vehicle in Mad Max?
I'd say a lot of that depends on your focus as a player and what you tend to enjoy more. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of car combat and hand-to-hand, and both are necessary to experience the game. There are some optional missions, though, and we actually happen to be looking at the entrance for a death race right now, which are, like I said, optional, but those focus on car combat, those focus on racing, whereas there's some other missions too, like convoy battles. Those occur all throughout the wasteland. I'll show you some, hopefully, in this playthrough, and those are opportunities for Max to take out convoy leaders who are accompanied by war parties. Doing that's going to give Max, award him hood ornaments that he can collect from the fallen convoy leaders, and those equip different passive abilities like defense, damage buffs. So I guess to answer your question, though, there's well over 100 hours, right? If you play all the content, if you do all the death races, tackle all the enemy encampments, I mean, there's so much combat and so much driving. You're not going to escape either, man. You're going to be doing plenty of both.
So it's funny that you mentioned sort of the completionist angle, because I remember for Just Cause 2, I found myself getting really hooked into the idea of going to every single camp and clearing them all out in that game. What is you mentioned sort of base camps in this game. What's the equivalent of that in this? Like, what if you're trying to clear the map from end to end? What's the primary activity that you're going to be going with?
That's a good question. We're going to take a look at an enemy camp in just a moment. And they're all over the place, and they vary. Some of them have boss characters called top dogs, who actually give you, if you want to change the color of the Magnum Opus, you're going to have to defeat the top dogs in the Wastelands. They are the guardians of paint. So that's one type of enemy camp you'll face. You'll also face oil pump camps and gas transportation camps. And those all require destroying objectives and taking out various enemy types. And for doing those, though, and for completing a camp and clearing it out, you're going to populate it with allies. And allies are going to provide you with additional bonuses like scrap drop. Scrap is your currency in the game. You get scrap for pretty much everything you do. Every vehicle you destroy, every enemy objective in the environment that you destroy, that's going to drop scrap. And by taking over a camp, you're going to get your hands on periodic scrap drops. There's some scrap right there. It's everywhere. And we'll take a look at the map real quick just to show you some of the camp types. We're going to make our way to, what's the camp we're going to? We're going to a camp somewhere down here. This is the one. We're going to do this one, but these are death races. This is an oil camp. The top dogs are indicated by this icon, and these ones right here are the transfer tank camps. So there's three very different types of camps in addition to stank gum camps, and these are kind of like these camps are kind of like your coliseums. The only objective in those are to defeat all the enemies.
So this game is obviously timed, not exactly, but roughly with the release of Mad Max Fury Road earlier this year, which I actually just rewatched a couple days ago with my roommate who had never seen it. And it's funny looking at that game a second time through the perspective of a game developer. And I'm curious, like, do you have a sense of like how much Avalanche factored in the George Miller movie when producing? I mean, obviously this game's been in development for a lot longer than this year, right? Like it was time for this game, but I don't know. Was the team aware of Fury Road? Were they collaborating at all with Miller's team, or was it very much like we're going to make a separate story in the Mad Max universe that doesn't necessarily overlap?
Well, in the beginning, I mean, it was really important to collaborate with George Miller and understand, his perspective and understand his role, what's important about creating a wasteland. But the goal of the game is to create a Mad Max universe all its own, right? To create something that stands alone as Mad Maxian, as a definitive Mad Max experience. So really, collaboration is about defining those tropes, defining what makes an experience Mad Max, what makes a world distinctively Mad Max, and it's about and it's those kind of things that the game is built after, modeled after, those tropes that affect how gameplay unfolds and affected how mechanics were designed. So scrap and resources, of course, they're not plentiful. It's not a game about, when it comes to combat, you'll see this, it's not a game about just shooting everything on the screen. In fact, ammunition is incredibly scarce. And while you do have a shotgun, it's something you want to use very, very carefully and conserve your resources. So those are the kind of things that were taken into consideration when considering what Mad Max is about. It's about making sure that universe comes together and creates an experience that is wholly Mad Max, because Mad Max has been a trope in other entertainment for so long too. Like Mad Maxian has been a way that we've described other games and other movies for so long. So this is about encapsulating all those things and making an experience that is wholly Mad Max from start to finish.
So kind of walk us through what the basics of the combat are. I mean, I've heard it described as almost a car combat game, but then it's also sort of not in a lot of ways based on what you're telling me on like restricted ammo. Like that's not what you think of when you think of car combat. So where does this game fall on that spectrum? And like what are the core tenets, I guess, of Mad Max combat?
Well, so we'll talk about that in two different ways. We'll talk about that as we're experiencing it right now with car combat. The car combat is at its core physics based. So you want to get in there and you want to hit stuff. You want it like that. You want to drive straight into enemies and take their armor apart. You also have a harpoon that's a really vital part of your weaponry. But another weapon that I have is I have the Thunderpoon here. Oh, okay, so it looks like a storm just kicked. This is half the fun of doing live demos in an emergent in an open world.
I mean, I saw that warning come up, and it kind of that's one of the major things I was going to mention about this game is that this is, I mean, like Just Cause and kind of like Avalanche's forte tends to be. This is an open world game. what sort of like I mean, I feel like Just Cause, and maybe this game isn't exactly about chaos the same way that game was, but like the reason that game stood out to a lot of people is because there were a lot of things that would happen that felt unique to you as a player. Was that something that Avalanche went into Mad Max thinking about? Like, was that a priority, or was it more a controlled narrative experience?
I think from my experience as a player and from the time that I've invested in this game, one thing I can say about Avalanche for certain is that they really enjoy. Yeah, look at that.
Jeez, yeah.
That dude. I'll get out of the vehicle and I'll be having a fight in a storm, and debris will come. You know, take enemies out or take Max out. There are a couple different types of storms too. This is a sandstorm, but there are also lightning storms, which you can imagine just create a completely different experience visually. But to your question, I think Avalanche really takes pride in the toolkit that they give players, and making sure that toolkit is something that only gets more interesting, and that the player will relish more and more over time. So everything that I have at my disposal, first of all, is upgradable. The Harpoon, the Thunderpoon, the Shotgun, Max himself, all of his combat abilities, all of these skills are upgradable several times, so that the player has a sense of power that continually grows throughout the game. And there's just they do a really good job of letting the player feel like they're growing. They're always continually adding new wrinkles to the abilities that the Harpoon or the Thunderpoon has. Not just in the amount of damage that they can deal out, but in the types of enemies and types of damage that they can inflict. Yeah, like I said, man, this
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I think there was a time when I really focused on like driving like a stunt driver might drive and staying on the road. But to really have fun in this game, you just gotta floor it and just to go flying.
A car just blew up in front of us after flying through the air in the storm.
So what I'm doing, I'm stopping to repair the Magnum Opus. During a storm, you typically want to seek shelter because you'll sustain quite a bit of damage if you don't. But I'm in the business of showing you the game, so I'm not trying to hide out right now. But Chum Bucket is wow. See, I just took some more damage. The more you stay in a storm, by the way, the more damaging it becomes potentially. However, there are crates of scrap that are floating about in a storm, so the risk reward is that if I stay out in a storm longer, there's more potential for me to get my hands on giant drops of scrap.
So, this is a super weirdly specific question, but in watching Fury Road recently, something I was really struck by that seemed very Just Cause-ian to me was the amount of vehicle-to-vehicle movement they do in that movie. There's so much like jumping onto another vehicle and taking it over, and that was something that I feel like Just Cause really did a lot of. But my understanding, based on what I'm seeing here, is that Mad Max is very much focused on this one core vehicle, right?
It is very much about your vehicle, the Magnum Opus, and creating it to your specifications to be a machine that is about inflicting damage or is about being really speedy. You can focus on weaponry, or you can focus on the physics-based combat and creating a machine that's just going to grind other vehicles. You can equip tires and rims that deal damage when enemies get close to you. You can invest more in your flame pipes so that you can use fuel as a resource to take out enemies, and you can also invest in Max and his progression so that fuel is consumed less, or you can invest in his abilities to deal more damage in combat. So it's also more about letting the player find the playstyle that's right for them.
One cool thing about this too, I think that's interesting is I feel like when I personally play open world games, a recurring problem for me as a player is that vehicles have no value. Like, every car is disposable. You just use it to get from point A to point B and then crash it into a wall and you never think about it again. This game seems to be taking a very different approach where your vehicle is super important to you and is your primary means of combat throughout most of the game. Does that change the way you have to treat your vehicle and build your vehicle? Do you ever have to worry about leaving it behind or taking it for repairs? Like, how like, for example, let's say theoretically you get away from it. Do you have a way to call it to you, or do you have to go find the car every time? Like,
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, check it out. You have a flare gun that you can call Chum Bucket with. Anytime the vehicle is out of sight, as long as you're not in an enemy camp, you'll be able to signal to Chum Bucket. He's actually in sight right now, so
right.
I can't signal him over. But we might get a chance to look at that later. There's an enemy convoy. This is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. And I'm actually going to go ahead and participate in one because when in Rome. So the enemy convoy is marked by that piece of UI with the skull, but typically they're guarded by a war party. You're talking about vehicle-to-vehicle movement. You're actually going to see that this war boy is going to board me right now. If I don't take him first, and then I'll use my harpoon on this guy to take him out. Sometimes all you have to do is take a guy's tire off.
Right.
And now he's out of the race.
There's a lot of, I'm noticing, like, controlled use of slow motion in a way to kind of emphasize the physical impact of the cars. You were mentioning that you can also, like, have tires that have spikes coming out of them. So is that one of the fundamental choices you make as a player? Is, like, do you want to focus on projectile weaponry versus physics-based weaponry?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that's certainly some early game kind of decisions you'll have to make. Is, you know, where do you want to invest as a player? How do you want to play the game? As you get towards the end of the story, you'll have likely experienced a little bit of everything.
So I'm noticing some of these lower ranking vehicles have numbers over them. Is that like a level? What does that mean?
So that's the amount of armor that vehicle has.
Gotcha.
I can't actually use the harpoon to dismantle this vehicle just yet, because it has so many armored spots on it. So I'll have to grind it down by being very physical with it. We're good. We're good. If Max doesn't get out of the vehicle before that timer ticks down, then he's in trouble. I can also take any vehicle in the game though. So while there is a very strong emphasis on your own vehicle, I can collect all the vehicles in the game and add them to my. Anytime I'm in a stronghold. Oh my god! I gotta get out of here. Anytime I'm in a stronghold, I can choose to drive one of those vehicles, and there are different benefits to them to make them unique. Also, the death races that I can participate in. I was at one much earlier when we started looking at the game. You can race in the death races using the vehicles that you find in the world. Some of them are incredibly fast, incredibly spry. Some of them have landmines that they can drop. They have different benefits than Max might have in the Opus. So it's to the player's benefit to experiment and try all the other vehicles out. Plus, there are different rewards bound to completing challenges using those vehicles.
So we're currently engaged in this story mission, but I think something I'd like to see after this, if we have time, is I'd love to see what like your personal favorite type of side content is. If you haven't already played it to death, like what are the things you enjoy doing most besides main story content in this game?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great thing to focus on. So I can. I'm just gonna try to take this guy out by shooting the gas tanks. Come on, come on. What I'm headed towards next, I'm headed towards a top dog camp, and those are kind of like those are like boss characters. They're beefy and more significant, and they're the ones who drop the paint. They drop paint colors when I can defeat them. So that's actually my favorite content. I'm a really big fan of the combat system in this game, and just Avalanche's ability to let the player do a lot by actually having to let the player feel very empowered by doing little. I think they're really good at, for example, I'm driving, tearing ass around the wasteland, doing donuts, leaning out the window, firing a shotgun, firing a harpoon gun at moving vehicles, and it's actually all really fundamentally easy to do. I think you were mentioning something about. There's a lot going on, there's a lot happening, and Avalanche does a really good job of making a lot happen with layered controller functionality by attaching a lot of contextually sensitive commands to just a very few buttons. And they're really good at that. So
I guess walk us through kind of the fundamental controls here. Like how do you pull out weapons? How is the slow motion something that's initiated automatically? Like
yeah, anytime I engage with one of the. I know I'm getting
it's hard to talk and play at the same time, I think, with any game. So
a little bit, yeah. Yeah, the slow motion is used anytime I'm going to try to steal a vehicle and show you a little ground combat. Yeah. Anytime you go into one of the weapons that the Opus has, that'll go into slow motion. So that'll help you target and take a look at the enemies around you without having to forfeit control of the vehicle, without having you go careening off a cliff or a cliffside or something like that. Actually, Max is in trouble.
So I'm noticing there's sort of two separate health systems in a way, right? There's Max's health, which we see in the lower left corner there, and then there's sort of the vehicle health too, which is indicated through the smoke and fire pouring out of it.
Right, and you can also see on the right side of the screen. There's the Opus's HUD. So it has fuel to manage, and fuel is of course through driving, but also from using the flame pipes. That will consume fuel as well. So fuel's a resource you can typically find in an enemy war camp. And you can use it to refuel the Magnum Opus. Alright, we got a little distracted, but I'm going to go try to find that enemy camp.
Alright, cool. I mean, like, some of my favorite moments in past Avalanche games have involved being on my way to one objective, and then having so much happen to me that I forget what I was even doing in the first place. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
some of that good statue toppling tech from the first...
I think that's that's just a great aspect of open world games, right? Is I'm on my way to do something, but I got distracted doing something else that was really fun for 3 hours or 4 hours.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
This game was developed by the sort of I guess the core of the primary Avalanche team in Sweden, right?
That's right.
And then I guess in New York they're working on Just Cause 3 right now. How long has this game been in development, and do you have any insight into how the decision was made for this to be their next big budget follow-up to Just Cause?
Oh, that's a good question, man. You'd probably have to go way back through to the beginning of development to really understand how those things work. But I know they really, they just really wanted to make a Mad Max game and respect what's so great about Mad Max in this world. So I'm at an enemy camp right now, and you can crawl into the back of the Opus. It's really, the Opus is so much more than your car. It's your mobile fortress. And when it's not billowing smoke, I can look out of the back. You can even drive around in it while Max is in the back. Chum can do some driving and help you get to a strategic vantage point. Max is a really, really tough dude. He's really capable of handling himself, but he can be a little fragile. He's like really powerful, but also pretty fragile. So I think if I were to just head into this war camp right now, I would open myself up to all of these threats. But if you're strategic and you approach from afar, you can eliminate some threats before heading into an enemy camp. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just cleaning out some of the trash before I head into the camp.
And you were saying earlier that ammunition's relatively limited. I'm noticing you've got like maybe 10 bullets left for this with the sniper rifle.
Yeah.
How many, do you have more weapons than just that right now? Can you hold a set number of weapons at a time?
Pretty much Max has the sniper rifle. As far as firearms go, Max has the sniper rifle in the Magnum Opus, and he has the shotgun in on foot. Gotcha. And both of those can be upgraded several times. So I've taken out some of the bigger enemies, and I'm going to go ahead and head into the camp. And when you get spotted by camp, it looks like we took out all of the perimeter defenses, but if you don't take out the perimeter defenses in time, they will get buffed. They have a short period of time where they can. Oh no.
Seems rough. One interesting mechanic here that had never occurred to me before is when your vehicle is on the brink of being destroyed, and your buddy here is repairing it for you. It seems like part of what you have to do, because Max is so fragile, is kind of like hide out and use the car as cover so you don't get steamrolled.
Yeah, and what I was trying to do, I think. Now, I of course should probably spend a little of my resources going in and upgrading the Magnum Opus, upgrading its armor, or that will keep happening. We're also being today we are kind of especially being rampaged by these war parties. It doesn't always happen. I can't even get into the car because it's so smoking right now. I have to let it.
It looks like the camp is gradually being alerted to your presence since this unexpected sort of emergent car battle has broken out in front of your mission.
Oh, almost. Okay, I just gotta get in. There's one more piece of perimeter defense. I think there's another sniper firing at me, but there's also a flamethrower in front. Oh my god, which the war party is just gonna push me right into. You gotta be kidding me, dude.
I mean, to me, this is the most exciting stuff in an open world game. Like, no moment in the past 3 minutes was predictable. It's all sort of stuff that's happened to you. Well, I mean, I guess now would be a good time to talk about the hand-to-hand combat. Like, is it sort of a square to attack, triangle to counter system? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, pretty much. And you've got a roll that's factored in there as well, and you've got a bunch of different abilities that you can upgrade over time by investing scrap into Max. So everything about Max, I don't want to stay still for too long because I know another war party is like right around the corner. Or this guy right here.
Whew.